In this video, we're going to have a recap of all the chords covered in beginner acoustic and also a couple of chords that are really useful to know that are perhaps really similar to the ones you know already. Starting off with our 5 basic major open chords. The 5 basic major open chords we should know by now are an E major, A major, D major, G major, which can be played with 3 fingers but is often played with 4. Those do not have a different name because they use the same notes. And finally, C major. And there is one song that uses all those chords in reverse order, and it is Hey Joe by Jimi Hendrix. If you just strum C major, G, D, A, E, we're literally playing Hey Joe, and that's a highly recommended one. What we should also be aware, at least with basic major chords, is that all of those chords only include 3 notes, but some of those notes are duplicated on different strings and at different octaves, so a lower pitch and a higher pitch. For example, C major just uses C, E, G, and then a repetition of C and E on the thinnest 2 strings. So we have what's called a tonic triad or a major triad, and then on top of that 2 notes repeated that have already been played in the chord with only 3 different letter names. The only other basic type of chord that we have other than major chord is a minor chord. The chords we covered are E minor, A minor, and D minor. And finally, we've also covered an open chord way of playing a B minor, which was a B minor 7, which otherwise we could only play as a bar chord, but this enables you to play any of those songs with a B minor chord absolutely fine, especially those that are looped with a D major, B minor. That's your get out of jail free chord for sure. We also want to know that all of those E, A, and D major, the lowest finger of the 3 moves down by 1 fret. In E's case, it just is lifted off. And that is how we get from a major chord to a minor chord for E, A major, A minor, and indeed D major and D minor. The only other 3-note chord that exists in music where we just have 3 notes that are perhaps repeated over 6 strings or 5 strings, but only 3 different letter names, are sus chords. This is where the major 3rd is suspended and we either play the 2nd or the 4th, aka sus2 or sus4. The 3rd is suspended, that's what gives the sus chord its name. These tend to be very easy to play because they often involve just lifting off a finger. If we play a D chord with the middle finger lifted and just 2 fingers down, we're playing a D sus2, which sounds absolutely beautiful. And if we add the 4th finger on to a D major chord, we're playing a D sus4. However, that's not why we give the chord its name. The 2 adds the 2nd note of the major scale in place of the 3rd note of the major scale, in this case D major, and then the 4th, a D sus4, adds the 4th note, suspending the 3rd, not playing the 3rd, and that's how we get a D sus2 and a D sus4. Exactly the same logic applies to an A sus2 and an A sus4. The 3rd, played on string 2 this time, is suspended on both the 2 and the sus4. The other easy one we can play is an E major to E sus4, where that major 3rd, the note that took a chord down to the minor, is suspended, so we can play E minor to E sus4, or sometimes in different songs, E major to E sus4, both happen. The next most common chord embellishment is absolutely the C add 9, which, because we've added a new number, does add 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, the 9th note of the C major scale to our C major chord. And that's how we generally fret it. D sus4, C add 9, and G major go together very well. That's the most common chord progression after our basic open chords. I filled in some music theory there that we perhaps didn't cover at the time of learning the chords, so that these next chords fully make sense once you understand about the triad, for example. That's essential to know for us to be able to really understand what's happening with slash chords, which have nothing to do with the guy from Guns N' Roses in the top hat. Sadly, though he does use them. These are referring to the forward slash that go between two other letters. For example, C slash B chord refers to a C major chord that is played with a B note in the bass, and in many ways this is the way that we would typically fret that chord. Other very common ones are G major over or forward slash B, G over B, which means we don't play the G root note, but we play the rest of the G chord the same. There's our G over B chord. The other most common slash chord, G over F sharp. There's E, F, F sharp. The rest of the G chord's the same, and with all these slash chords, we typically mute string 5, though we don't have to for it to be fine. For the C over B, it can be without or with the mute, but typically the note under the slash is muted to make the chord just sound a little bit cleaner, as opposed to this, which sounds a little muddy in the lower end. That muting with the first finger, or any finger for all of these slash chords, muting underneath the middle finger, for example, really helps to just clean up the sound. The most common chord progression there would be a C, C over B, A minor, finish that off with an F. You've basically got a very common 4-chord song, something like Wherever You Will Go, and countless others use this progression.